panel for the weekend. Welcome to SCGCON. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Jeremy Noell, and I will be your moderator today. Our first panel will be Pauper with the Professor.
Hello.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I think that the best thing to say about myself is just that I have a YouTube channel called Tolarian Community College. You may have heard of it. And we sometimes do some Pauper content there because I love Pauper. And here today, I'm going to talk about Pauper with Jeremy Noell, who likes Commander.
That's true.
And we're not going to talk about Pauper Commander, are we?
No, we will not be talking about
No
Pauper
offense,
Commander.
no offense to people who love Pauper Commander, but it's a bit grindy for my taste. It's a little grindy, although with Dominaria giving us all these uncommon legendaries, a common legendary, not too far off,
Yeah, could be.
I wonder.
All right, so first off, can you tell us what Pauper is? Just let us know. The basics. Very
Do you
short.
really think
Very short.
that people attending a panel called Pauper with the Professor would be like, what is Pauper? I want to attend this panel and finally get an answer Google could not tell me.
What is Pauper?
What is Pauper? Pauper is the best budget format available for Magic the Gathering, but I would maintain that it is a great format regardless of the price, because Pauper is kind of like Legacy Light. It uses cards from all sets from Magic's entire history, with the only restriction, aside from a small ban list, being that all your cards have to be commons or cards that were printed at some point as a common. So if there's rarity shifts, whether it be from common and now it's an uncommon, well, that's legal because it was originally printed as a common. We get a lot of really cool bonkers broken cards from the early days that were originally commons that are now never going to be reprinted at common, but they're Pauper legal. And so I think that you get a lot of fun in Pauper because there's power at common. Counterspell is a common. Lightning Bolt, too powerful for standard. Oh no, couldn't ever reprint Lightning Bolt in standard. It would break the format. But you know what? Lightning Bolt, it's Pauper legal. We've got Pyroblast and Hydroblast and all kinds of fun at the common level. And so Fire Blast is a common. Oh, it's so nice in mono red. So nice in mono red Pauper. Yeah, so that's Pauper.
The basics of it?
Commons,
Right.
Commons only. I could have
Commons
just
only.
said commons only, but you know, we got to fill an hour.
Your interpretation of
I
it.
have been known to talk a little bit. I'm a
bit.
bit loquacious.
So, the first video that you did talking about Pauper
Yes.
was actually your very first Tolarian Wins episode.
Was it?
Yes.
I hadn't done an
July
introduction to
9th.
Pauper?
Yes.
Really?
July
Oh,
9th,
wow.
2015
Okay.
was your first Tolarian Wins episode.
Yes.
And it was the introduction to Pauper. At the time, the best deck was Delver. It still had Cloud of Fairies in it.
Yes, yes. Cloud of Fairies being banned in Pauper is one of the best things to happen to Pauper.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that first video and your what drove you to make that video specifically?
Well, I think it's what drove me to make that video is I wanted the reaction to that video. Should I wait until the announcements are done to speak?
Can we up it a little bit? Are we? Can everybody hear us okay still?
Yeah.
All right.
Please find your seats. They found them.
Dig
all
it.
right. And if you look under your seats, nothing. Nothing at all.
Absolutely
I'm
nothing.
sorry. It's Star City Games. So stingy. No. Stingy City Games is more like it. You should have seen how I could tell this joke because we're not at Channel Fireball. They had me on camera at Channel Fireball and they said, what would you play in this GP? And I said, oh, I can't afford it. And they were like that. I would
cut 'em
never
off.
say that. I can tell that. All right. Anyway, what was the question? What did I want to accomplish with the video?
What drove you to that video?
So I wanted, with that first Tolarian Wins on Pauper, to have a reaction that a tweet that I randomly made 2 years later had, and it didn't. But it started to get a little bit of awareness for Pauper. But I had really hoped that that video would kind of spark a lot of interest in Pauper and a lot of demand for it to be off of Magic Online and as a paper format, and that didn't quite happen, but it did pique a lot of people's interest, I think. And it was the start of this Pauper journey that we've been on ever since. You know, there's a lot of problems in Pauper. I don't know if waiting until the announcements are done is ever going to work.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know.
Constant
I'm sorry,
announcements.
guys. I'm sorry. But I don't know if we're ever going to get Pauper on Gatherer, because they literally say that the program code can't handle adding Pauper legality, which, thank God for scryfall.com, but I really would like to see Pauper get fully endorsed and embraced by Wizards of the Coast. And I think that there's a lot of money to be made in Pauper as well for the company, as well as for secondary sellers like Star City Games, which is where I eventually went with that tweet kind of egging them on to do this, which they did, which is cool.
The tweet in question was December 11th of last year, 2017. And the tweet actually said, what would have to happen for there to be just one Pauper GP or SCG Open? Like, can you imagine if there was one once? I think it would be awesome. That tweet got over 450 likes, almost 70 comments of people just kind of saying, this sounds awesome.
And there you go. That's what I say is that that was a tweet. And I did an entire video ranting and raving about wanting essentially that same thing, and it didn't get any traction. But then time later, just doing that tweet, it did, and it really isn't on me. It's on all of you. It's on everybody here. And I mean that when I say it's that the community wanted Pauper, that the community had played Pauper, that people are tired of it being ignored like this. They want to get these games. They want to be able to play with these cards that are classic Magic cards that are never going to be reprinted in Standard, that certainly don't seem to be making their ways into most Master sets. And so it's like, we want to play in this format. And so it's really not on me. It's on all of you. Because I could have been tweeting about, Australian Highlander, and nobody would be, all right, Professor.
You heard it here.
Which
Professor
is a cool
said next
format.
big format, Australian Highlander.
Australian Highlander, you heard it here.
Get your staples now.
Yes.
So, just almost 2 weeks after that tweet initially came out, you recorded another Tolarian Wins on December 28th, where you actually announced that Channel Fireball announced that they were going to be doing Pauper double-up events at all of their GPs in January.
Yes.
And that you were attending 3 of those Grand Prix events.
Yes.
And shortly, a couple months later, I think, we actually announced our Pauper Classic.
Yeah.
So the reaction seems to have really
up.
Well,
we're in the middle of something really epic here, because basically Star City Games is going head-to-head with Channel Fireball, little rivalry, and that's good for the consumer, because literally in 6 days from the Star City Games Pauper Classic, the names Open, Classic, Invitational, Exclusive, whatever, the Pauper thing they're doing, the big Pauper thing. 6 days later, Channel Fireball is having their giant Pauper tournament, and these are the 2 largest competitive Pauper events. Top 32 deck lists are going to be
16.
Top 16 deck lists are going to be published by Star City Games. Channel Fireball is scrambling to figure out if they can match that. They were not prepared for that, and I said, well, that's going to be embarrassing for you because Star City's on it. And so they're like, yeah, we'll do it. You got a trophy or a plaque here.
We got a plaque.
You got a plaque for the winner here.
Plaque for the classic.
Trophy from Channel Fireball.
And
we will see, I think we will see which one has the most attendance.
Yes.
It's going to be pretty cool.
The top 4 competitors also receive an invitation to the next Invitational.
Cool. Right.
All the perks of a classic.
But I say, not good enough. We want Star City Games a Pauper Open. I want to hear the greatest commentary team in the business, which everybody knows is Star City Games. I want to hear them commentating on a Pauper match played by the pros, by the SCG grinders, and by the average player that is dreaming big. That's what I want to see, Star City. Jeremy, make it happen. That's. I assume that's your department, being the commander guy.
Not my.
No. Okay.
All right. So one of the things that we want to talk about a little bit, and this was brought up quite a bit. We asked for questions to be submitted from people through email a little while ago, and one of the things that was brought up is the cost of the format. Ever since your initial tweet about 6 months ago, prices have been rising. I looked it up. Your original Tolarian Wins video from 2015 with Delver, you talked about the prices. The total cost of the deck at that time was $36. Is It Delver currently is $136, according to MTG Goldfish.
Well, MTG Goldfish, it draws from, look at that.
So there are certain cards that have gone up in price, basically
Who's
due to the
playing
popularity.
Delver? I mean, come on.
Preordain is one of them. It's gone up from $1 to $4. Spellstarter Sprite has gone from 50 cents to $2, things like that. Most of these jumps, according to MTGstocks.com, happened in January 2018.
I didn't realize it was going to be. I didn't realize this was going to be this kind of a.
Any sort of coincidence there?
I choose not to respond
Take
to
the
that.
fifth?
I take the fifth.
Take the fifth. So a lot of the questions really came up.
Preordain. I don't know any preordain. I've never actually played a preordain, Mr. Noel.
A lot of the questions have come up of is the format sustainable with the rising prices?
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. Don't get mad at the community wanting to play Pauper for the rising price in Pauper. Don't say, oh, now that everyone's playing Pauper, then that's how you sound, Jeremy. Now that everyone's playing Pauper, Preordain's $2. Get mad at Wizards of the Coast for not reprinting the damn thing. Get upset that they are so ineffective at reprints that common cards are now costing this much just because, and this is unheard of apparently, people want to play with them. Wizards of the Coast, unprepared for such a reaction. People want to play with these cards? We did not expect that. What do you want us to do? Reprint them? But no, we can't reprint cards like Preordain. No, it's ridiculous. They need to take note, and when you get a Masters set, maybe in the common slot, instead of whatever, it's actually cards like Lightning Bolt, Preordain, Spellstutter Sprite, and guess what? I've heard that those cards are fun in draft too. So, you can kill a few birds with one stone, and many of those cards are played in other formats as well. Preordain's banned in Modern, but some of the other ones are played in other formats as well. Oh no, actually most of the banned in Modern cards are Pauper legal. Well, my Pauper deck could beat up your Modern deck,
Surprising.
Yeah. Okay. But also, I would say, it's $4 for a common, and that sucks. That does suck. What's Standard cost you right now? You want to put together vehicles in Standard? How much is that going to cost you? Oh, and it's good for how long? A few months? So does it suck that there are some decks in Pauper that are now $100, even $110, $20, $30 each? Yeah, I agree. That stinks, but it's still way more affordable than any other format, and you've got that deck for life. That deck does not rotate out. You making minor tweaks, and that's not your only choice, because unlike, let's say, Modern, where the cheapest deck is still about $900 if you're talking competitive, in Pauper there's tons of $20 decks. I've got some deck techs coming out because Pauper is so unexplored. So Delver, sure, it's the big blue baddie of the format, and that one's a top-rated deck because everybody's raising their prices on those staples, but nobody's raising prices on Cascade. I've got a Cascade deck tech coming out, Pauper Cascade. It's great, and it's $20. I've got a deck tech coming out on Pauper Mono Black Ponza. It's $20. And there's on, and that's the great thing about Pauper, is that there are decks to be discovered. There are decks that are not yet popularized because the pros aren't playing it because they're not doing an open, and so it's a brewer's paradise, and it's a place where you can say, I don't want to play Mono Blue Delver, which you shouldn't be playing anyway, and no offense, Mono Blue Delver fans, and you can then go and say, I want to play elves instead, I want to play slivers, I want to play zombies, I want to play something like that, and there are still $20, $30 decks available, and even if you're spending $70 on a deck, it's a deck for life, and it's never going to rotate, and it's way cheaper than Standard, Modern, and Commander. That's what I got to say. And we should be saying to Wizards, enough! Pre-print these damn cards. Thank God they reprinted Ash Barons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. So, you've talked about the tournament series that are coming up as well. The Classic that's coming up this weekend, the tournament that's coming up, and the Channel Fireball. One of the tournament series that you really pushed for, which was one of the bigger tournaments for Pauper, was the Mock Sporting Rags to Riches. And you made several tweets and commented on your videos about that. Do you believe that this is the sort of tournament that someone's LGS could use to actually bring in Pauper players, or would they need to do something different?
There's a lot of LGSs that have large Pauper events, many of which, like, actually, you know, the Mock Sporting House Rags to Riches, it caps at 75 players. I was there at the last one, and it capped at 75 players. They've got a really generous payout and stuff, but like I've heard, there's a Pauper event up in Linvola, Michigan. It's a Pauper Lenova in Lenova, and it's a Pauper 1K that they hold once a year. I think they just held it a few weeks ago. I tried to retweet that when the 2K. Look at that, 2K, Pauper 2K being held, and more. I get messages like this all the day where it's a lot more than just an 8 to 12 person casual, you know, like in-store Pauper event. And you know what? Those are great too. When someone's just like, yeah, we had 12 people for Pauper. That's awesome. Yeah, 12 people for Pauper at your LGS. It's fantastic. The problem is that WotC is not giving points properly for Pauper. I don't know why. Or I think I do know why, but so you're not, anybody who wants to start competitive grinding and racking up points, they won't let Pauper pay the same as like a casual modern event.
You mean Planeswalker points?
Planeswalker points, yeah.
The multipliers.
The multipliers.
Yeah.
They won't do it for Pauper.
Because they're all casual events, so they're all 1x multiplier.
And they won't even let the system, get this, they won't even let the system record it as a Pauper event, so that way their tracking software just shows it as other. Casual/other.
Yeah.
That way they can never say, oh wow, those Pauper events are really on the rise. We don't have that data. We don't see that happening. Casual/other events, maybe, but that could be anything. That could be prismatic. That could be tribal. That could be Australian Highlander. Which is a good format.
A lot of the questions that I actually had come up with,
yes.
A lot of other people had come up with.
All right.
So we had asked people to send in their questions via email before the event. And so one of the main ones that I was going to ask is, what makes you so passionate about the format that you want to be a champion for it? Is it just the cost that anybody can get into it, or is there anything else?
That's a big part, because I'll tell you one thing. Listen, you guys, if you watch my YouTube channel at all, you know I love Magic the Gathering. I love this game. I think about it every minute. That's what I do. I love Magic the Gathering. And you know what I hate most about this game that I love is that it's impossible to play, that it's so hard, and there's so many obstacles in our way to play. It's the meme of like, can you just shut up and take my money? Can you just shut up and let me play Magic? And it's like, no, sorry, you know, Modern Humans is $1,200. No, sorry, the deck rotates in a month and you'll have to start from scratch again, yada, yada, yada. And I feel that Pauper really embodies the ability to say, here's the type of deck I want to play. I'm going to get that deck. I'm going to get it, and I've got it. And a year later, you still have elves. You still have slivers. You still have lightning bolt. And I love that about Pauper. But I do also love the gameplay, because I feel that every set that comes out, with exception, but that there's more of a downward trend, and it feels like, oh, now Lightning Bolt has to cost 3. You know, now we could never have Counterspell. We could never have these classic spells that are the what so many of us think of as fundamental Magic the Gathering. It's all every set. Well, what's our watered down Counterspell going to be? What's our watered down Giant Growth going to be? What's our watered down Doomblade going to be? Now, that's not always true, but it's often true. Oh wow, it's going to cost me 5 to destroy target creature. Whoopee, you know. And I just want to play real Magic, but Legacy's too expensive in the reserve list. I just want to play real Magic, but Modern has issues. I just want to play real Magic, but my friend's Cube, I need to sign an insurance policy to draw 7. I just want to play real Magic. Well, let me just put a Pauper deck together for $20 and play Cascade. That's a really cool deck, by the way, Pauper Cascade. Really cool. You heard it here.
So thank you for multiple people for sending in that question.
Yeah.
One of the other ones that was quite popular was, what advice would you give to a Magic the Gathering player who's new to the Pauper format?
Play what you love. There's no, what a lot of players say to me when they're brand new to Pauper is, what's a good starter deck? There's no starter decks in Pauper. Pick your deck, fully upgraded, top tier. What do you want to play? Like every other format, it's like, oh, well, I'm thinking about getting into Modern. What do I do? Oh, okay, so why don't you start with this super watered down budget like Mono Red to see if you like Modern before you invest a used Honda in your deck. And so that's how you usually operate in formats. But people come to me a lot with Pauper and they're like, well, what do I ease my way into Pauper with. Don't ease your way. What do you love? There is a thread, if you go to the our Pauper subreddit, it's stickied, it's fantastic, and it's called Post the Type of Deck You Love to Play, and we'll tell you what Pauper deck is closest to that type of deck. And people can go on there and say, I like to play Modern this, I like to play Commander that, I like to just play this type of deck. And people are like, check this list out, check this deck out, check this list out. It's not every possible deck. If you like to play Storm, you're screwed, I'm sorry. Well, there's the Zubera, actually. So even there, even Storm players can find a scrap in Pauper. And that's really what I would say to anyone who's just like, well, I don't know about Pauper. What should I start with that's light? It's all light, you know?
So what resources would you suggest? It
Our,
like
our Pauper is a good one. I know it's Reddit, but here's a weird thing. The Our Pauper subreddit is actually full of nice people, and they will treat you well, and they are so desperate for people to keep playing Pauper that they will be polite to you and, wait for it, encouraging of you. I know. So I strongly recommend going to our Pauper. There's a lot of great... Now, what kind of Pauper content does Star City Games do, Jeremy?
That's a great question. Why don't you go to starcitygames.com and search for Pauper? Because I don't know.
Star City Games, which I'm in no way affiliated with, actually has a lot of growing Pauper content. There is a lot of Pauper gameplay now available with Todd Anderson and others.
The Versus series.
The Versus series is doing Pauper. They have yet to bring in any of their big name hitters to it, but they still have some really great personalities and players doing Pauper, so you can watch some Pauper gameplay there. MTG Goldfish does a lot of Pauper content. Everybody's doing it. It's growing. Channel Fireball, all the YouTube channels, Mana Source does Pauper content. I know that Evan Irwin of Magic Mike's loves Pauper and does Pauper deck techs on his channel sometimes. There's a lot of Pauper stuff going on. But like any other format, I mean, come on, go to MTG Goldfish, click Pauper, see what decks are there, and pick anything except Delver. And you know what? I want to comment on Mono Blue Delver while I have this opportunity. Here's what I think about Mono Blue Delver. It's a lovely deck, and if you like to play Mono Blue Delver, more power to you. I'm not yucking your yum. But people, like, every time I do a Pauper video, everyone's like, oh, Mono Blue Delver is the only deck in Pauper. That is the most erroneous nonsense. Mono Blue Delver is far from the baddie that it once was when Cloud of Fairies was legal. There are so many decks. I could name to you many decks in Pauper that are not even in blue, that are absolutely at the top of that MTG Goldfish list. There are plenty of builds that are not Mono Blue Delver and not blue at all, and so this idea that a lot of non-Pauper players use to discourage people from playing Pauper is that Pauper is made up entirely of blue decks, and those blue decks are almost entirely Delver Blitz or something like that, and that's just completely false. In fact, we have a really diverse meta at the top level if you look at those decks in terms of their percentages on MTG Goldfish, and it'll be really cool to see what is in the top 16 here this weekend.
Yeah. All right, so this one kind of flows into how do I get into the format, and it's from a few people who have asked, what can I do to help the popularity of Pauper, to help get other people in?
You mean help the popularity of Pauper? Yes. Well, to help the popularity grow, the one thing I would say is simply, you know, if you really do want to do that, starting at the local game store in terms of just saying, hey, are people interested in a Pauper night? A lot of people might say, oh, I have a Pauper deck. I just didn't know that we were playing it here. See if you can get, like, hey, Tuesdays at this time, what if we all come down and try and get an 8-person to fire at our LGS? Let people know that at now all Star City Games events, there's Pauper side events going on. So if you want to go to an SCG, or I'm allowed to say GP, right? I can say that they exist, that GPs exist, and at all GPs there are Pauper events. It's going on everywhere. So try and help foster that growth. You know, if you've got multiple decks at home, bring them with you down to the game store so your friends can borrow it. But more than anything, if you do have a minute and you do have some form of social media, let Wizards of the Coast know that Pauper is a format you want to play, a format that you enjoy, that you want to see some support for even just in the most, if they gave Pauper 1/10 of the support that they gave Brawl when it came out of nowhere, we would be made in the shade. I'm not asking for the keys to the kingdom. I'm asking for 1/10 of what you gave Brawl. And that's it. And that's it. Just 1/10. Just a lick. Just want a lick. This is the big lick, right? We're in the big lick. We are in the big lick, and we want a little lick of Pauper.
The reason why it's Big Lick is that used to be the name of Roanoke before they changed it.
I'm very glad they changed the name because
so you'll see that around
Big Lick Games, Big Lick Games.
Big Lick Comic-Con, Big Lick...
it's the Big Lick Open.
Yeah, Big Lick, yeah, that's what it is.
Problematic. Problematic.
So speaking of getting more attention for the format...
Yes.
George Murphy wrote in...
Yes.
Increasing competitive play may bring a level of play to the format that it's not prepared to deal with. My fear is that pros will solve the format. Is the increased attention to the format a good thing?
Yes,
because
it
of
is.
That?
Yes. This idea that, oh no, if Pauper is actually paid attention to, it will crumble. First of all, if that's true, then to hell with it. I mean, let's move on to the next thing. Let's try Peasant. I don't
Australian
want...
Highlander.
This Australian Highlander, which, by the way, has been around for a long time. It's fantastic. But here's the thing. Pauper's been around. Pauper is not Brawl. Pauper is not Tiny Leaders. Pauper is not Frontier. Pauper has been around for over 10 years. It has been played and true and tested on Magic Online in leagues where pros have played. In fact, lots of pros are very excited now that the players are getting interested in Pauper because they get to write Pauper content. Go look at pros that are writing this content for Star City Games, for Channel Fireball. They're thrilled. They've been playing Pauper in their off hours for years. Pauper has been around long enough and played heavily enough that if the format were going to break, it would have broken already. It would have been destroyed already because, listen, there are some days where Pauper leagues on Magic Online are comparable to like the Friendly Modern League on Magic Online. They're bigger than the Legacy League. They're much bigger than the Brawl League, which I don't even think is running right now. And this has been going on for 10 plus years. If the format were going to break, it would have broken already. The format is tried and tested and true. If some competitive players happen to find a way to popularize one particular deck to suddenly be dominant in the meta, like, is that not the case in Modern? Is that not the case in Standard? Is that not the case in any competitive format? You are going to get some of that, but that doesn't mean that you can't run your $20 Pauper, Zombies deck and still have success with it. And it doesn't mean that there aren't more decks to be discovered and popularized as well. And so I say that instead of being afraid of what will happen if suddenly we have an SCG open and the pros are playing Pauper, embrace that idea because that's what's going to encourage Wizards to reprint Pauper staples and suddenly make these decks $20 again across the board. Commons are very hard to keep the price high. And all those cards you listed to me earlier, Jeremy, I guarantee that one common reprint in a Masters or block set will turn it from $4 to 25 cents. And it's not going to be like, oh, we reprinted Preordain as a common and it's still $4. Baloney. It's just that high because it's never been reprinted or it hasn't been reprinted recently, or it's one of these commons from the early sets that is just really, really scarce and they've never, ever reprinted in a regular block set. Start making a priority for that. Start making room. And Pauper can be, again, the $20 a deck format, and I believe that. That's not going to go away because commons, reprinted at commons you cannot do price runs on. You cannot buy out commons. You can't.
Yeah.
Except Oubliette, which I'm sorry, but run Faceless Butcher instead because it's 25 cents and it's kind of the same thing. And you know what? You're not playing at the SCG Open, so whatever. It's 25 cents.
Do you think that events like this weekend's Pauper Classic and the upcoming Pauper Format Championship will be the push Wizards needs to finally sanction the format? If not, what do you think it will take? And this is a question from David Kirby.
David, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, David, but Wizards of the Coast is not just like looking and saying, oh, wow, this is really popular. We should encourage it. Wizards is saying we wish people played the game this way, and when they see that they're not, they say, how can we make them? So unfortunately, we've got an uphill battle because this is not, by all indications, a normal operating procedure for them to just embrace what the players are doing. Rather, they'll take a look and they'll go, wow, Commander's popular. What if we could make Commander standard only and have it rotate? That'd be great for us. And that's the way that they think and operate. So them seeing all this Pauper support, maybe, I mean, listen, I've had people whisper to me, yeah, Wizards is going to do some stuff soon. And I'm like, that sounds beautiful. Let me know when it's actually happening, though, because they whisper a lot of stuff's going to happen soon. I think that there's a lot of skepticism about it. I think that there's a real push at Wizards to have standard and draft, as they wish that was all there was. You come in, you buy your packs, you play for a little bit, you throw your cards away, you do it again. I think that's what they wish the entire game was. And so embracing formats like Pauper and Modern and stuff, they're very reticent to do so. And so will an event like this get them interested? Maybe not, but that is the power of Star City Games more than anything, more than Channel Fireball, your competitors, more than Channel Fireball, you have the power to operate without WotC approval. Channel Fireball cannot hold a Pauper Grand Prix without the mothership patting them on the head and telling them it's okay. But you Mavericks in Roanoke can do whatever you want. And if you are the first to hold a Pauper Open, which is the same kind of as a GP. So if you're the first to hold that level of event, it will be monumental. You will embarrass and shame Channel Fireball, and you will force Wizards to see the huge numbers that viewership will bring in, the huge interest that players will voice. And so I think that a Star City Games specifically, I'm just posing for the camera there, specifically a Star City Games Open more than anything else could be the biggest thing for Pauper, because they're not going to be... Channel Fireball, I think, has hit its wall. They want to. Oh, believe me. Believe me, they want to. But they are too entwined with the mothership. They must have mothership approval. But Star City Games, you're mad. You're mad, and you're rogues. You can do what you want. Pauper Open, 2019.
So you sort of talked a little bit about it. This is a question from David Semenchik. Often when someone raises the question of a larger Wizard-sponsored Pauper tournament, a GP for instance,
yes,
one of the main critiques of the idea is that Pauper doesn't sell packs, so WotC won't support it. Do you believe it's as simple as that and such an event will never happen?
Okay. Does Modern sell packs? No. Why? Because there's no Modern cards in the packs. It's not like Modern cards can't be put in packs in some way, shape, or form. When you say to me, Format X doesn't sell packs, I say, well, that's because there's nothing in the packs for the format. If you put the cards that people want to play for the format, then the packs will sell. It's that simple. Now, if you believe for 1 minute that putting Modern staples in packs will not sell packs to like that's another story. Well, Professor, if we put Noble Hierarch and Ether Vial and Cavern of Souls and the fetch lands, if we put the fetch lands in booster packs for $4 each, that won't sell those booster packs. Come on. Yes, that will sell those booster packs. The reason Modern isn't selling booster packs is because you don't have anything worth it in the booster packs. And the same, I'm using Modern as a more widely understood example here, because then the same thing is true for Pauper. If you started saying, oh, hey, commons, well, let's reprint Preordain, let's reprint Lightning Bolt, let's reprint Oubliette, let's reprint, let's reprint Chainer's Edict, let's reprint these cards because they're played heavily in Pauper. They're great in draft. We'll find standard formats where they make sense and they aren't going to wreck everything. Then you know what? Pauper will sell packs. Absolutely.
Okay.
And since Pauper rarity shifts are legal and an uncommon that was once a common is still Pauper legal, they're not limited to just making those cards at the common level. And since there is always a bit of a fear of blue taking over, if Wizards paid a little bit of a, actually, I don't know, actually, I don't want to say this. I was going to say, this is what I was going to say, but I take it back already. I haven't even said it and I take it back. I was going to say if Wizards paid attention to Pauper and then said, oh, what are some cool commons we could print that would improve the format, that's when we're in trouble, actually. Because as soon as they start mucking about with the format, then we're in trouble. So we don't want that. But, you know, like, because we all know that the Commander, Wizards in Commander, oh boy, that's another panel, though.
That is a whole other panel.
Yes.
We have that one coming up later.
Yes.
So there was a couple of questions that were similar to basically what you had just said. Do you think that the sanctioned tournaments will have any impact on the way WotC will design future commons? Will this cause a swing of reprints, or do you think it'll water down and slot cards with more scrutiny?
I think that WotC will eventually have to answer to it. I think there's probably a civil war going on at WotC about what they want Magic to be right now. And I think there's a lot of people who might be arguing for let's just make the best game and the best product. And that's the direction I hope they go. But I think there's also a lot of people arguing for we have to control this game, otherwise it'll get out of control. And I disagree with that. I can see why they say that, and it's like, listen, if we just do this, it's all going to collapse in on itself. We must have precision in things. And I think there's, you know, it's a balance to all of this. But I think the more attention Pauper gets is nothing but a positive for the format and for the larger game. Because you know what? When you get tired of your standard deck and you say, I don't feel like building a new one with rotation, if you've got a Pauper deck in your pocket and your LGS is holding weekly Pauper events, maybe you'll show up to that instead of just taking a hiatus that you may never return from the game. And then maybe 6 months later, you're buying standard packs again. You have to look at the long term in that. There is such a thing as fatigue. There is such a thing as washing out of these formats when they get too expensive. And if there's lots of different ways to play Magic, you can migrate from one to the other and still be playing Magic. And no, Pauper is not going to make Wizards as much money as Standard. But if you've got a Standard player who might otherwise quit, who instead goes and plays Pauper and still patronizes their LGS, keeping it in business to hold those Standard tournaments, and then eventually returns to Standard where they might not otherwise have if they'd gone off and started playing Artifact or whatever, you know, then you're retaining the player base and you're getting a long-term foundation of stability within that player base. And so that's why you invest in a diversity of formats, in my humble English major opinion.
So, one of the things that's brought up a lot when discussing Pauper events in paper especially is that currently there is no across-the-board banned and restricted list. There is a banned list for online. Most people use the online banned list as their paper banned list, but obviously there are cards that are different, and legality is also an issue as well.
Oh, Wizards. All right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I have many, all of them strong.
I figured you might.
Here's the thing. We need a unified Pauper list. None of this like online only, paper only. Wizards has no paper only list. They do have an online only list. We have to embrace the online only list, and we need to find a way to sync up paper with online, not the other way. That what we need, and there are many Pauper experts, not me, but like actual Pauper experts who have gone through all the Pauper cards that have not yet been printed at Common on Magic Online and said, like, for example, Sinkhole would be bad. Don't reprint Sinkhole at Common. In Magic Online, that would be bad for Pauper. You know, there's some other ones like that where it's like, whoa, you cannot, that's not a good one to reprint. That would be like the equivalent of, let's just say that card is banned. But what we need to use is the online legality, because that's the tested format. That's the format we've been playing for 10 years. If you just go and you say there's like 100 paper common cards that have never been printed at Common and Pauper, and you just go and suddenly say, okay, these are all legal, well, High Tide is going to have some very bad results. You don't want High Tide legal in Pauper. That's going to go. Card Kingdom did that for a while, and it was like 70% of the decks were High Tide decks, and it was just misery to play against and stuff. So what Wizards needs to do is they need to look at the online list. They need to look at the commons that haven't yet been printed online that are harmless and say, all right, let's just shove these in the system finally. And then they need to say, all right, Goblin Grenade, High Tide, Sinkhole, and a couple others. We're going to say that's on the ban list in Pauper, and then have a unified paper and online list, but I think it needs to be based off of the Magic Online list. And if you are looking to set up Pauper events at your local game store, just go by Magic Online legality. Hop onto Scryfall, which has the Magic Online legality, and just say, listen, we're going by, if it's legal on Magic Online for Pauper, that's the way we'll play Pauper. It can be a little confusing because there's, thanks to Vintage Masters, cards like Tangle, which have never been printed at Common in paper, were downshifted to Common, and Tangle is played in Pauper, and that can get confusing. We're smart, we'll figure it out.
Okay, so in a similar vein, there are cards, we were kind of bringing up the banned and restricted list a little bit too. So Mike Palmer asks, one of the biggest pains in building a 16-deck paper Pauper collection is that anything with islands in it demands an automatic 4 preordain. That gets pricey, especially with this format. Does the extremely pervasive, flexible, and ubiquitous nature of the card warrant at least a discussion of banning?
No. Listen, Mike, right off the bat you said that gets pricey. Really? A $12 for a playset? That's pricey? Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. Like, talk to me when you've put your modern battle box together and what pricey is. This is not a problem inherent in Pauper is another thing. All formats are going to have the issue that if you are playing a certain color, then you're going to gravitate towards, like if you're in blue, you're playing Preordain in Pauper. That's true, name the format. If you're in red, you're playing what in Standard? Chain Whirler, I mean, that's going to happen. It's kind of the nature of Magic and the way that cards are done. I think that since that's the nature of Magic, that Pauper is the best format where it hurts the least, where no, it isn't pricey compared to every other format to get that play set of the preordains, and that's the exception to the rule. For every preordain, there's a million other Pauper cards that are 10, 25 cents each. So it's just these singular commons that should be on the hot list for reprints, and a single proper reprint of any of those cards will tank the price down to pennies. So I would say to that question and to others like it, pressure for reprints from WotC like we do for any other format, and know that even the most expensive Pauper cards, aside from Oubliette, which is the real big offender, they're not that bad. They're not Fetchland bad. They're not Goblin Guide bad. They're not Liliana of the Veil bad. They're not Karn Liberated bad. Hell, screw Karn Liberated. I can say screw, right? Screw Karn Liberated. They're not Karn Urza's Scion of Urza bad. I mean, look, you're gonna yell. You're gonna like be worried about Preordain and Pauper when the premier Magic format has got the price of Karn Scion of Urza going on right now. I mean, if that's okay, then leave me alone with Preordain and let me have some fun.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Do you believe that a master set is the way that we would see these reprints, or do you believe it would be something like a supplemental set?
Well, I mean, my dream is just that we'll eventually get these reprints for Pauper, for Modern, for Commander, more and more in block sets, but they don't want to do that. I really wish they would, but I think that we can have masters. People like to throw around the idea of Pauper Masters. I think it could be done, but I just don't see why Masters can't have Pauper staples at the common spot. Why do we need Pauper Masters to reprint Pauper staples? They're commons. Why don't we take a Masters set and reprint the commons that need to be reprinted in the, wait for it, common slot? We don't need Pauper Masters. We just need Master sets to be good. And then in the rare and mythic and uncommon slot, cards for Modern that need to be reprinted. And then they'll sell packs. And then when you say, well, Modern doesn't sell packs and Pauper doesn't sell packs, you say, oh, well, it sells Masters packs.
I saw you say people keep bringing up Pauper Masters, and I have several people who brought up, I saw your mock-up of what an official Pauper supplement provided by Wizards.
Yes. Now, that's another option, too. A Pauper, I don't see why we can't have, for 1995, a Pauper event deck printed, not all the time, but like, listen, Wizards has the ability, if Star City Games, now a lot of, a really great product for Star City Games or any major seller to offer are pre-built Pauper decks, but they have to go, Star City Games can't print its own cards. So they're like, all right, well, Star City Games is gonna make an Elves deck that will sell to you. You click a button, or you come up to the booth and you get Pauper Elves. That's a good idea, especially if it's pre-sleeved and in a little deck box. I just gave you a great idea. You're welcome. And that's a great idea. The problem is Pauper Elves is $70 or whatever right now. And so that stinks. Maybe you'll cut out a couple cards and make it a little budgety, and you can do it for $30. There's $30 Elves builds in Pauper and stuff, but Wizards can print the cards, and Wizards can say, great, let's print Mono Blue Delver at $20 a box. And then all the prices of those cards in Mono Blue Delver will go down. Let's print Elves at $20 a box, Affinity at $20 a box, all of these decks as a Pauper event deck. And that's another way Pauper can sell a product, and people can pick it up to jam Pauper games in between rounds and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, so we only have about 5 minutes left, so we're going to go with a couple of the quick hit questions here. First off, what is your favorite Pauper deck to play?
Favorite is so hard. Right now I'm really rocking Pauper Affinity. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that fling. And being able to fling a 23-24 ATOG at your opponent's face is the greatest thing in Magic. I love it. I love it when they realize you're going off and they look up at you and they're like, do you have it? And I'm like, I have it. Do you counter? I fling the ATOG at your face. Or, actually, better yet, do you counter? I counter your fling, I pyroblast your counter spell. To counter their counter is delicious. To counter their counter with a red spell is just chef's kiss.
What is your favorite Pauper legal card?
Probably Pyroblast, just because to counter, it's just like suck it, blue players. I can say suck it, right? Yes. Suck it, blue players. To counter a blue spell with a red card is just the ultimate experience.
What was your first homebrewed Pauper deck? And what inspired you to build it?
My first homebrewed Pauper deck was probably Pauper Goblins early on, where I was just throwing all the common goblins together in a deck. And that's a viable deck, and that's what's cool about Pauper is a lot of people's homebrews turn out to be very viable. But yeah, I believe the very first time I threw commons together without really looking at a deck list or anything was Pauper Goblins.
Okay. So, also forgot to mention, thank you, Kelly, Michael, and Chris for those last 3 questions.
Thank you, Kelly, Michael, and Chris.
Let's see. This is going back to our discussion on banned and restricted. What is the next Pauper card you think is most likely to be banned or restricted?
Oh, ban. We don't need bans. We're all right.
Are there anything that you think are troublesome?
Yes. Troublesome, probably, well, I don't know. It's a really good meta right now. Okay. It's a really good meta. I'm happy. I don't need bans. Pauper is in a great position right now.
Okay.
I call for no bans.
No bans.
I call for no bans.
So saith the professor. Do you feel that there is a specific degenerate deck in the format currently?
Well, yeah. I mean, degenerate. Now, define degenerate. My mono black Ponza deck is delicious because you can destroy Dark Ritual into Icequake turn 1. You can destroy their land turn 1, and then continue destroying land each turn if it goes off right, where your opponent literally sits there at most with 1 land in play for the whole game, while you then chittering rats them and make sure that there's no progress. And oh, that's a great deck. Is it as good as, classic mono black Control? No, but it's a hell of a lot more fun. It's also $20. Yeah. Like mono black Pawns is great. I mean, we just saw, if you guys are Redditors, somebody just posted their turn 1 win in one land spy.
Oh,
Pauper 1 land spy went off turn 1 and won. That deck is ridiculously expensive and incredibly inconsistent. But again, when it works, just beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you to Gavin and George for those last two questions. And then
I don't like Acid Trip. That deck is annoying. Acid Trip or any of those. If you've ever played against Acid Trip, that's degenerate.
Okay. And then which current uncommon do you think would have the largest impact on Pauper if it reprinted as a common?
Oh, well, come on. I mean, there's a lot of uncommons if we reprinted. I personally would love to see them take something like Marrow Regery and reprint it at common so I can start going out of control with Merfolk in Pauper, but that's a bit of a pet desire. I don't know, in terms of which uncommons would have be a real big mistake, it sounds like you're asking.
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know, because Pauper's strong. Again, we're playing with cards that are too strong for Modern in Pauper. We're playing with cards that are banned in Modern in Pauper. So when you say to me what uncommon would break Pauper, it seems to be based on this false premise that Pauper is this really weak, watered-down format, and it's not. I don't know. What are you going to play that I can't original counterspell or what have you? I'm all right. I've got the affinity. Marrow Regery, so the professor can have Merfolk.
This was a question from Jacob that is not related to Pauper, but related to you.
Oh.
What's the best? Has the best Merfolk commander been made?
No.
If so, if not, what would you design?
I want a Naya Merfolk commander because we've seen green Merfolk on Ixalan, but prior to that, it was white Merfolk on Lorwyn, and so now I have to choose. If I run Sig River Guide, I can't play with any of these new green Merfolk. And if I run Kumina, there's two problems with Kumina. One, I can't run my white Merfolk. Well, there's three problems. Two, I actually am not impressed with Kumina and think he's kind of lame. And three, he's a jerk. I don't want to run a jerk commander. I mean, did you read this story? What a jerk. Sig, my friends, I will take you wherever you need to go on the Marrow Lanes. Kumina. Who wants to hang out with that guy?
All right, so we're going to wrap up that discussion then. And where can people find you? You've already talked about your YouTube channel. Somebody asked specifically, do you think you'll ever stream on Twitch? And I know that this is something you already do, so.
I occasionally stream.
Yes.
I do. I have been known to stream, and I eventually want a regular streaming schedule. Right now it's called, hey, when the professor has 10 free minutes. But I do stream on Twitch. But the best place to find me is on YouTube, at Tolarian Community College on YouTube. That's where the work that I do is placed. And I hope very much you'll check that channel out if you haven't already. But yeah, I do stream on Twitch, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. I'm thinking of starting an Instagram. Grandpa's finally getting on Instagram. And as soon as, I'm not getting on Snapchat though. It sounds like a dating app. I don't think that's Snapchat. I'm not going to Snapchat, guys. It sounds weird.
Thank you so much to the professor for joining us today.
Thank you for
so
having
much
me.
for everybody for coming out.
And thank all of you for your excitement and enthusiasm in Pauper. You did this.
The professor will be around all weekend. He will be competing in the Pauper Classic on Sunday. But for the remainder of the weekend, today and Saturday will be...
And there's daily Pauper events as well every day.
Yes,
correct?
That is correct. We have daily Pauper events every day. If you just go up and ask, there should be, as soon as they get 8 people for a pod, they will sit you down.
Woo! Pauper, all right.
So you will be wandering around the hall, you'll be spell slinging, and people can come up and say hi.
Oh my God. Everyone, look, it's Wedge from the Mana Source right there. Oh my God, look, right there.
Called out. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you,
for coming
guys.
out.
Woo!
Have a great weekend.